This video is actually a part of my big Xenoblade Chronicles 2 retrospective, where I talk in detail about every single chapter of the base game. But I wanted to release this DLC section separately, because I feel like it does a pretty good job at answering the question of whether or not this expansion is worthy of your time. If you like videos like this, be sure to check out the main video, leave a like or check out my channel. But without further ado, let's cut to the video. Around a year after the release of the base game of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, they actually released a DLC, which got this really cool physical edition. I always like it when games do that. That's besides the point though. This is Torna, the Golden Country, a prequel DLC taking place hundreds of years before the base game. At first I wasn't sure if I should include it in this video or not, but fuck it, let's just discuss it while we're here, because despite Torna being 20 to 30 hours long, I don't actually have that much to say about it. In this expansion you play as Laura, and of course her blade Jin. Throughout the story we form a party with Adam, Mithra and Bridget with their driver at the time, Hugo. There are obviously a bunch of other characters that you meet, some new faces and some old, like a young Mikhail for example, and the story here is pretty good, even if I don't think it was exactly necessary. The base game already does a fantastic job at explaining the meaning that Torna carries, while also keeping a veil of mystery around it. This is especially the case for Adam. I actually really loved that the base game never showed him. We only heard about him or saw obscured visions, which fit his character incredibly well, being this mythical hero of a bygone era. They gave us enough for the story to work with, but always kept it vague so your imagination can fill the gaps. It's true that these types of expansions can add depth, but it's often not worth it considering how much intrigue we can lose in return. But Torna does something that not many other games are capable of. They lift the veil, showcasing Torna and Adam, the person Mithra used to be, the relationship between Jin and Laura. We even take part in the Aegis War, but they were able to do all of this without taking away from what makes it so interesting. The characters being as good as they are is a really big part of how they were able to achieve this. Not every character is treated equally, as I didn't really care for Hugo, but I loved getting to know Adam. When you meet him, you immediately start to see direct similarities, but over the course of the DLC, they mold him into a great character in his own right. Seeing him in action was awesome, but I kind of expected this, knowing what we knew from him from the base game. What did surprise me, however, was how much I liked Laura, who is the emotional core of this narrative together with Jin. We might be dealing with grand-scale conflicts like the Aegis War, but this DLC still manages to be a story on a personal level. In terms of Jin, there's not really anything here that we didn't know already or that we couldn't figure out from the base game, but they still did a great job at expanding and building on his story. Seeing this period of his life before he lost everything was pretty impactful and added a lot to his character. Granted, he was already easily one of my favorite parts of this game, but the DLC elevated him even further. And all of this is the main strength of this expansion. In my opinion, it's not vital to the experience of Xenoblade 2, but it is a welcome addition, fleshing out characters, deepening our understanding of them, and showcasing this time period of the world. But that is sadly where my praise for this DLC ends, because despite all of the incredible things that I mentioned earlier, in the end, my experience with this DLC wasn't that great, and the biggest reason for that is the pacing. Not even the pacing of the main story itself, because if you just go from main event to main event, it's actually pretty solid. But the pacing of this entire thing is ruined by this one system called the community level. This expansion has a bunch of NPCs, and all of them have side quests, and upon completion of any of these, it will count towards your community level. This system starts off with just Jin and Laura in the middle of a big empty circle, but every single time you complete someone's side quest chain, it'll add them to this graph, and after collecting a certain amount, you gain a community level, 16 of them to advance to level 2, 32 for level 3, and so on. This is basically a progression system system to show your connection to all of the NPCs in the world of this DLC. I actually think this graph is pretty cool. It makes you feel like you're establishing your own little community, and it adds a lot of weight to all of these side quests. It definitely makes them feel a lot more important than the usual ones. These side quests are not as good as the main quests of the expansion, but they're definitely a step up from the ones from the base game, and I would say that most of them are decently enjoyable. There are some stinkers though, because I remember this one Nopon asking me to destroy 300 crates for some reason, but the annoying part of this system is the fact that these side quests aren't really optional. At certain points, the game will prevent you from progressing the main narrative until you hit a certain community level, literally blocking any and all progression, forcing you to help more random NPCs instead. And this is where this cute little system becomes the thing that actively ruins my whole experience. I do understand their thought process behind this. When you start this expansion, you already know that Torna and everyone on it will be tragically destroyed by the time that credits roll, and that will be pretty impactful, considering that you probably care about the main gang. But this impact will be much bigger if they can get you to care for everyone. And so they force you to interact with these NPCs, they force you to get to know them, form bonds with them, just so they can rip all of them away from you. But this was not really the way of doing that, because as soon as the game started forcing me to interact with them, it immediately had the opposite effect. There were times in this expansion that I truly felt like doing side content, so I went out of my way and did some questing, growing my community. But at a certain point, I was satisfied. I felt like I put a good amount of time into the DLC, I could feel that the narrative was getting closer to a conclusion, so I was ready to continue the story and ride it out until the end. So I started focusing more on the narrative. Until the game just stopped me. Oh, you thought you were done? You thought you were satisfied? Good one, man. No, just go help out like 30 more NPCs maybe, and then we'll have a chat about continuing the story. It felt like a slap to the face, because you cannot force someone to care. At this point, I wasn't doing these side quests because I wanted to, or because I wanted to grow my community, but because I had to. The game was actively wasting my time. I was connected to my little community. I really like these guys, they're pretty chill, but I was also satisfied. And every further interaction that I was forced to have, every further connection that I was forced to make, made me like this whole community less. I literally just wanted to move on, but I couldn't, for the simple reason that now the ending of the game could be like, look, isn't it sad? All of these people are dying. These are the people that you helped and they are dead. But I was just there like, thank God this is over. I don't want to spend another minute in this fucking community. This DLC has a main narrative that's maybe 5 hours long, but it ended up taking me 20 to complete. Maybe the ratio is a bit of an exaggeration because I played this in early 2024, but I am not replaying those 20 hours to find out and to give you an accurate representation, which honestly proves my point, because Xenoblade 2, the base game, is like 60 hours, and I gladly replayed that from start to end, but I cannot be bothered to touch Torna again. It's honestly a shame, because the core narrative of this DLC is great, but if you need me so badly to spend time with this community, why don't just work those side quests into the story itself? So it's not a 5-hour story with 15 hours of side questing, but a 15-hour narrative that dives deeper into the community aspect. Genuinely a baffling decision. I don't want to end this section on a negative note though, which is why I haven't talked about the Torna combat system until now, because this combat is incredible. Put simply, it is built on the same foundations as the base game, but it is a lot faster. You don't need to go down specific paths for blade combos, you can just throw some elemental combos at the enemy and you'll immediately have the cores build up, you get full bursts a lot faster, and it's just a lot of fun. And considering how much shorter this expansion is, this faster paced version of the combat system fits this expansion incredibly well. The RPG mechanics like the aux cores and the core chips were also streamlined a bit to make them easier to manage, so all around some great changes on the gameplay front. Visually, it was also really pretty. I especially loved revisiting locations from the base game, like Torna, which were brilliantly redesigned to look completely different, but also recognizable at the same time. And lastly, I also really loved the ending. Experiencing the destruction of Torna firsthand, seeing Mithra and Malos go all out in this Aegis war, and while it is a very spectacular and bombastic conclusion, it also manages to be very emotional, because you know that none of the people involved here will ever be the same again. It hurts to see Laura be ripped away from Jin, not only because we now experience their time together, but just because you know where it will lead him, unable to move on, trapped by her final words, a life without purpose. It hurts to see Mithra fight because you know the damages that it will cause. It was all done in an incredible way. But I'm also not gonna lie, this ending would have hit a lot harder if I was able to experience this finale when I was satisfied and not 10 hours later after being forced to grind that damn community level. But all in all, even if I have my issues with it, I can't deny that I still appreciate Torna for what it has to offer, and I am happy that I played through it, because it still has that incredible character work, the fun combat system, and that ending. If you're a big fan of Xenoblade 2, this is honestly an easy recommendation. Just keep the community stuff in mind, spread out the side quests over the course of your playtime, and honestly, just take your time with this game. Maybe have another game on the side, have this as one of the games in your rotation that you can chip away at in the background, and then you'll probably have a pretty solid time with it. Now, of course, if this video completely turned you off of it, that is understandable. This DLC is definitely not for everyone because of this structure. It might be kinda weird even to hear me recommend it after being pretty negative on it for half of this video, but I just wanted to share my experience and inform you on the actual contents of this expansion. It's true that all of the main story beats might already be implied in the base game. It's true that the pacing is pretty rough, but that doesn't mean that it's not worth checking out and experiencing firsthand, as it still has a fantastic combat system, another incredible OST, and it truly expands the story and characters of Xenoblade 2 in a very meaningful way. I would honestly be surprised if you watch that ending and not even get a little bit emotional if you are a fan of this series, because damn, that ending is done so incredibly well. But that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Again, this was only a small section of my big Xenoblade 2 retrospective, so if you're interested, be sure to check that video out. It will be in the description. I'll have a card on screen somewhere right now as well. Also, if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, leave a comment with your thoughts on the DLC of Xenoblade 2. I feel like it is kind of divisive, as I have some friends that really love this DLC, despite the community stuff, and then I have some friends who think that the community stuff ruins absolutely everything about it. I fall somewhere in the middle, as you've heard, but because of that I am very curious of hearing your thoughts, so leave a comment, check out my channel, check out my other videos, and again check out the main video if you are interested in my experience with the base game of Xenoblade Chronicles 2. But I'm gonna leave it here with that, so once again, thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and hopefully I'll see you all again soon.